It all started in Trent Alley.
Decades after it disappeared.
Asian Americans helped build what Spokane is.
Spokane's hidden neighborhoods.
It's a long time coming.
Now honored by the city.
They told us to move out from there in 1978 or 77.
A community forced to flee finds a new home in the inland Northwest.
We started noticing more and more Marshallese coming together.
Being a leader.
It's one thing to be the first, but it's a problem if you're the last.
In more ways than one.
And what you believe is what you become.
Blazing her own trail.
There aren't many Asians in the business, let alone owning wineries.
Through the grapevines of Walla Walla.
In a Crim 2 News special,
we highlight the people,
the culture,
and the history of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Crim 2 News. I'm Channing Curtis.
And I'm Tim Pham. May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. If you're wondering why we celebrate in May, it marks the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The nearly 2,000-mile stretch of tracks was completed on May 10th in 1869. It was the first continuous railroad line to cross North America, and the majority of the workers who laid the tracks were Chinese immigrants.
Asian and Pacific Islander Americans make up about 6% of the U.S. population. That's more than 20 million people. Plus, the ancestral roots of AAPI people represent more than 50% of the world.
Here are all the countries we celebrate this month. It includes Asia, which covers countries like China, India, the Philippines, Russia, Iran, and more. There's a total of 48 Asian countries. Also included in this month's Heritage celebration are the regions of Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. Polynesia is actually made up of more than 1,000 islands scattered all over the central and southern Pacific Ocean.
Now here in Spokane, there is a place that may not be here anymore, but it left a lifelong impact on the entire city. You might not know the Lilac City once had a Chinatown. It consisted of several blocks along today's Spokane Falls Boulevard. There was also Trent Alley, which became a hub for Japanese culture in the inland Northwest. In the late 1800s, Chinese and Japanese immigrants came to the area for the gold rush and Transcontinental Railroad. It's estimated that more than 1,000 people lived in the area by 1910. But over the years, Spokane's Chinatown and Trent Alley shrunk due to the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Japanese internment during World War II. But this month, the city of Spokane is honoring and remembering the legacy that those districts left behind. New markers are set to go up in downtown where these neighborhoods stood more than 100 years ago. Nicole Hernandez has more on the special dedication the city made for AAPI month.
Oh, it's
Spokane native Joanne Ferris
beautiful.
is seeing the Trent Alley marker in person for the first time.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
A marker dedicated to remembering Spokane's Japanese American culture.
So these are the words that my dad and Ed Tsudakawa wrote many, many years in the 60s.
Decades in the making.
And this is the translation in Japanese.
The plans for this marker started before Expo 74 and are just now coming to life.
It's a long time coming, and I'm glad that there'll be this so people can remember.
Remember the influence Japanese Americans have had on Spokane.
It all started in Trent Alley.
Trent Alley was the center of Japanese culture in Spokane, but was demolished to make room for Expo 74. It used to be where the Saranac building in downtown is now, and that's where the marker will be as a reminder.
That there were people who worked hard and suffered.
It's a story similar to what Chinese Americans lived through too. Chinatown, also a bustling hub of culture in downtown Spokane decades ago, eventually whittled down to nothing after the Chinese Exclusion Act stopped Chinese people from moving to the U.S. This marker will be dedicated to Chinatown alongside the Trent Alley marker.
This is great. I'm so proud. Thank you.
Like Nicole mentioned, the remaining buildings of Trent Alley were actually demolished to make way for Expo 74. The city of Spokane announced a 2-month-long celebration for the 50th anniversary right here in Spokane.
And Spokane's Asian American population is a big reason why Expo 74 was as successful as it was. Crim 2's Nathan Hyun dives deeper into an often forgotten part of Spokane's history.
I'm standing by the clock tower in Riverfront Park. It's one of the few remaining structures left from Expo 74, and it might be surprising to hear about the group of people that built the World's Fair. It's been almost 50 years
There's a lot of pain that is associated.
since Expo 74 took over Spokane.
Asian Americans helped build what Spokane is, and especially our historical landmarkers that we have now.
Vina Cathcart has lived in Spokane her whole life. She wonders why more people don't know about the group of people that made Spokane's World's Fair possible.
A lot of the Asian Americans were not included in that story.
Asian Americans were responsible for most of the work to create the World's Fair. Most laborers worked on the railroad.
Even before Expo 74, when everything we're standing on was a rail yard.
But when the World's Fair arrived, those same laborers transitioned to build Expo 74.
That group of people really came in and did the hard labor.
The city announced plans for a 2-month-long celebration for the 50th anniversary of the World's Fair.
All of our community, the chance to tell the story of the impact of the fair.
Program manager Matt Santangelo hopes to tell those lost stories.
Part of the World's Fair is recognizing the impact, good, bad, and indifferent. And that's part of our goal for this next year, the 50th celebration.
In 1974, Spokane was the smallest metropolitan city to host a World's Fair.
Chinese immigrants work hard to provide for their family.
Even though they aren't widely recognized, Wei Ling Ju says Spokane's Chinese population should be proud.
The expo was one of the testimony of the success of our community, and I'm so proud that the Chinese community has been a significant part of it.
As for Vina, she's excited to see
Kind of how we rectify history a little bit, not necessarily rewrite it, but acknowledge all of these past voices.
some of the structures from the World's Fair still exist, including the clock tower and the pavilion. The 50th anniversary celebration starts in May of next year, and for 2 months, Riverfront Park will be transformed to honor Expo 74. In Spokane, Nathan Hyun, KREM 2 News.
Another community in Spokane we are highlighting is the Marshallese population. Communities in Schools says after English, Marshallese is the next most spoken language in its schools.
So KREM 2's Nathan Hyun spent time with some of Spokane's Marshallese population to learn more about who they are and why they choose to call Spokane home.
Spokane is one of the main 3 areas in the United States with established Marshallese communities. The others are in Arkansas and Michigan. Marshallese families are now immersed in Spokane, but it hasn't always been easy for the Marshallese to feel at home.
I feel like everyone in the Marshallese community should also get the same benefits as everyone else here in America.
Nathaniel Hermios considers himself lucky to be an American citizen, something his parents can't say for themselves.
The whole family had to come move and then adjust to the environment.
Nathaniel's mother, Marissa, lived on the Marshall Islands for most of her life until she realized her grandfather's plants began to
Don't do red and brown. It look like they don't, healthy.
poison left over from nuclear testing during the Cold War caused a color change.
They told us to move out from there in 1978 or 77.
Even though the testing was during the Cold War, poison remnants remained. Since 1986, Marshallese people were allowed to come to the U.S. as legal non-immigrants.
These are basically the decorations you would see at any Marshallese house. Majority of these tend to be handmade.
Many fled to Spokane because there was already a strong community. Spokane now has more than 15 Marshallese churches.
In the beginning in Spokane, there wasn't that much Marshallese. But as we grew up more, we started noticing more and more Marshallese coming together.
Marshallese immigrants came to Spokane to give their children a better life. Aside from English, you might be surprised to learn what the second most spoken language is in the Spokane public schools. Not Spanish or Russian, but Marshallese.
Most of our students are from the Marshall Islands, which is here in Micronesia.
Cindy Hagan is an English language development teacher at Shaw Middle School.
Ancestors.
She also runs a Pacific Islander club at the school.
I wanted to give students that place to come together and have a sense of ownership in the school and a sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging that communities and schools notices every day.
I love their sense of community. Like, they are very tied in with their own community.
Communities in Schools is an organization that facilitates low-income programs throughout SPS. Their program manager says Marshallese students stick up for one another.
I feel like they're very expressive in being able to show other people what their community is.
According to the U.S. Department of State, people from the Marshall Islands are not considered immigrants or refugees, nor are they considered U.S. citizens.
I really need those things, but I have to stay on my to take care of the, family.
As for Nathaniel, he hopes that his parents and many of his friends can get the rights they deserve.
It feels like just being forced to give money. And that's how I see it as I'm still growing as an adult. And I still see that it's kind of unfair.
Nathaniel has yet to even step foot on the Marshall Islands, but he continues to share his culture with the rest of Spokane. The Marshallese are a small but mighty community. As of 2023, the United States government still considers them as legal non-immigrants. In the studio, Nathan Han, KREM 2 News.
For AAPI Heritage Month, we are sharing the stories of our diverse communities and even correcting the myths that inaccurately portray Asian culture. When this KREM 2 News special returns, we turn the calendar back to find out why AAPI Heritage Month is recognized in May. We are going to take a quick break, but first, we're introducing you to Asian American trailblazers. Up first is former Washington Governor Gary Locke. He was the first governor of East Asian descent in the continental U.S. He is also the only Chinese American governor of any state. Not only that, he was also the first Chinese American to serve as the U.S. ambassador to China. Welcome back to this KREM 2 News special. Like we mentioned, May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
But have you ever wondered why we celebrate it in May? Abby Larico verifies what makes this month so special.
Turning the calendar to a month that needs no abbreviation, May is worth celebrating for a lot of reasons, including the spotlight on our AAPI families and communities. Who exactly are we talking about, and why is May AAPI Heritage Month? We turn to these sources to verify. AAPI stands for Asian American Pacific Islander, those whose ancestry and culture comes from this part of the world. That's more than 19 million people, and Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial or ethnic group in the U.S., according to Pew Research Center analysis. There's a lot of diversity of nationalities and ethnicities within that AAPI label, which is why not everyone agrees on it. People who are Hmong or Indian or Samoan or Vietnamese or Filipino, for example, each bring their own different lived experiences to the table. On one hand, the Smithsonian details how solidarity among Asians, especially since the 1960s, has led to increased visibility. But there's concern that the unique traits and needs of some groups are minimized when lumped together. But May is a chance to share and celebrate this diversity, as well as all we have in common with others. After 3 years of AAPI Heritage Month by way of annual presidential proclamations, this 1992 Act of Congress put it on the calendar permanently, recognizing, quote, Asian and Pacific Americans have contributed significantly to the development of the arts, sciences, government, military, commerce, and education in the United States. According to the official .gov webpage on the topic, May was chosen to commemorate the arrival of the first Japanese immigrants in May of 1843, as well as the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, built by mostly Chinese immigrants, in May of 1869. No matter your heritage, May is a great opportunity to support and learn more about the contributions of the AAPI communities in this country and in your town. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
But it's really been important to me that it's one thing to be the first, but it's a problem if you're the last. So I think that's always been my focus, is I recognize the importance of representation.
Pat Chun is the only Asian American athletic director at a Power 5 school. I sat down with Chun to learn more about who he is and how his background helps him lead the athletic program at Washington State University. Our Asian American and Pacific Islander coverage does not stop here. You can download KREM 2 Plus on Amazon or Fire TV. Welcome back to this KREM 2 News special. We are highlighting the local people, culture, and issues in the AAPI community, including Pat Chun. He is WSU's current athletic director. He is the first Asian American athletic director at a Power 5 conference school, and he was recently recognized with a huge honor. Chun is one of the newest members of the Asian Hall of Fame. It was established by Seattle's Robert Chin Foundation to recognize trailblazers making a difference. He sat down with me to share his story and how his background helps him lead the Cougs. Tell us a little bit about who Pat Chun is.
Well, I always tell anyone who's willing to listen that, you know, my story in sports actually predates my birth. So my dad came to the United States in 1969. My mom followed in 1970. But my dad, his first job was at the downtown YMCA in Youngstown, Ohio. So that odd twist of fate, he actually came here to teach Taekwondo. So I was like, my parents are essentially, I tell them, are a stereotype. My dad's a Taekwondo instructor. My mom literally still works in the as a cashier in the grocery store in her hometown, still to this day. When you're growing up and you're different, you know, you're kind of inward focused. But then as you get older, you kind of you learn over the course of time that, man, what your parents had to go through to come to a different country, to learn a new language. I know a lot of Asian American Pacific Islander parents, they come with this American dream. And my parents were no different. And I tell everyone they had two tools in their tool belt. It was going to be education and a work ethic. But because my dad's first job was in Ohio, I was born in Youngstown, raised in Cleveland, grew up this diehard Ohio State fan. I was one of those kids in a state that wanted to go to the big flagship institution in his home state, and ended up going to Ohio State and graduated from there, but got my start in college athletics there.
Your parents, I'm sure, are extremely proud of you. First athletic director in a Power 5 school as an Asian American. What does that mean to you to have that distinction?
Well, it means my mom can brag at church. So that's probably the most important thing for my mom. But it's one thing to be the first, but it's a problem if you're the last. So I think that's always been my focus, is I recognize the importance of representation. You know, I know growing up in this country, there just weren't a lot of Asian Americans that you would look up, that you could just see in sports. You know, whether it's competing and things, you know, it's just one of those things. If you don't see it, it's just hard to believe it. You know, I always tell people, if you look at who the minority groups or the underrepresented groups are in college athletics, we're the minority of the minorities. So it's nice to be able to celebrate, you know, a lot of the success stories that are going around college athletics, but also it's a nice opportunity to hear a success story of others. You know, hearing your background story is great to hear. You know, it's awesome to hear someone, you know, it's empowering for everybody when you have representation.
Tell us about the award. I know you're modest about it, but being inducted into the Asian Hall of Fame, what was that about?
When you see the list of people that are in that Hall of Fame, it's really humbling because you have some people that have really done things to change the narrative of Asian Americans in this country. So it's really humbling to be associated with that. But also on the flip side, it's also, I hope, you know, when I look at that award and when I think about that award, although I personally don't like celebrating it, it is a reflection of everybody associated with my life and my family's life. And that to me is a really, really big thing, really big point of pride for us. I've always been of the belief that the most important word is believe. And what you believe is what you become. And what you believe ultimately dictates your behaviors. And your behaviors ultimately dictate your habits.
Well, as Pat said, there's not a lot of Asian Americans in the sports industry. Another Asian American breaking barriers is Rich Cho. In 2010, Cho became the first Asian American general manager of an NBA team. Fitting for a trailblazer himself that the team was the Portland Trailblazers.
Up next, we head down to Walla Walla to meet Fiona Mack, owner and winemaker at Smack Wines, the first Asian woman-owned and operated winery in Walla Walla.
When I first moved to Walla Walla about 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of rosé around, and in the summertime, it's over 100 degrees, and you honestly don't really want to drink anything other than rosé. So I saw a need.
Why she says rosé isn't just a summertime treat, and how she is paving a new path in the industry. Welcome back to this Crim 2 News special. We are highlighting the local people, culture, and issues in the AAPI community, including Chief Master Sergeant Joanne S. Bass, who became the first Asian American to hold a senior enlisted position in the U.S. Air Force. She was born in Hawaii and currently serves as the Chief Master Sergeant. Now, here in Washington, the Walla Walla wine region is considered one of the best in the country with award-winning tasting rooms. But did you know it's also home to the only Asian-owned winery in the state? I took a road trip to visit Smack Wines. So today I had the very tough assignment of driving down to Walla Walla to try out Smack Wineries, and that is because they're one of the only Asian-owned wineries in our entire region. So of course I had to come and try them out and meet the owner, Fiona, who makes incredible rosés. Come on in with me.
Hi. Welcome to Smack Wines. Thank you. When I first moved to Walla Walla about 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of rosé around. So I decided to open a rosé-only winery just to explore the versatility of rosé, kind of bring also the fun factor back into wine drinking. I know there are people of color, but there aren't many Asians in the business, let alone owning wineries. And then you can come in and then you can try all of the 6 rosé now I make, and then you can draw up your own decision and you can keep exploring this category of wine that you like. To me, winter is all about celebrations, anniversaries, holidays. This one is mostly Syrah and a little bit of Grenache. And this is the only wine I make that has a touch of sweetness. The great thing about wine is that it's living. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Crim 2 News. I'm Channing Curtis.
And I'm Tim Pham. Keep it here on Crim 2 News for more original reporting. Our Asian American and Pacific Islander coverage does not stop here. Check out our exclusive content in the Crim 2 Plus streaming app. You can download Crim 2 Plus on Amazon or Fire TV.